Welcome to the Boise State Project Management Program. Today we're going to be looking at stakeholders and communications, understanding the principle and how to use the templates we use in our class to capture this information. Stakeholder and the world of communications planning and management are two critical areas of a project manager. There's a saying in PMI and project management that 90% of the project manager's job is communication. That job is focused on the stakeholders. It's important that we understand who our stakeholders are, how we communicate them, and also how we plan our activities on the project to manage them. So our focus today, we're going to look at stakeholders, and then we're going to give an example how to use the workbook or template to capture that information. Then we'll look at communications. How do I communicate with these stakeholders? Again, identify the medias, formats, activities, and we'll use the workbook. As we look at the workbooks, an important point to remember, there's no exact formula or science. This is not like an accounting class where the debits equal the credits. This is not a statistics class where X equals Y and that kind of activity. What we're doing by the templates and their real purpose in the project family is to give us a place to capture the information. So as we review the workbooks, yes, we look for certain structures and points, but more importantly, we're looking, have you captured that information? Are they a tool for you and your team to understand and manage your project? I like this slide because it really captures for me the essence of project management, especially when the PMIs made the change to what they call PMBOK 5 in the latest change. I believe that everything we do is for a stakeholder and sponsor. So I try to put that in the center of our scope or our target to make sure we know what we're doing. And then we, on top of that, we develop a plan how we communicate with those key partners and sponsors. How we make sure that we are actively keeping the team, the sponsors, informed. And then we look at the other areas, the areas of risk and quality. All these feed into items that you add to your WBS and where the work is done. Again, these are not something you'll find inside of Microsoft Project. That's why the templates are an important concept for us to learn, because with this we can capture and build a stronger WBS by understanding the task, effort, and the relationships of our project. One of the common questions, well, who are stakeholders? And there's many ways to look at this. This slide kind of looks at some areas of your boss, your manager, your peers. So you're going horizontal in the organization, your team that you manage or you work on, and most importantly, the customers. And as you look at the stakeholders, kind of think of the four parts of the circle inside, the four pieces of the pie. What are their requirements? What do they expect of you? What do they want from you? What do they need from you? What are their resources that you need on this project to be successful? And what you want to do in this whole plan is to really work together, because the most important thing that you need on a project is to get the support of the critical sponsors and stakeholders. That's what this process is about, to make your project successful by understanding stakeholders, what they want, what they need, what you need from them, and how you get their support to make your project work. These next few slides are actually a part of a presentation I used at Hewlett-Packard with a major account team a few years ago. I was asked as the president of the PMI chapter to come in and talk to this major account group. And so these are lessons I learned about stakeholder management. And I think it's some key things we can use in our class to illustrate some of the key concepts. One of the first slides, I tried to talk about my background of 25 years at HP, military and aerospace experience, and teaching at colleges, and especially at Boise State University and the project management program. And from that teaching, with the practical experience, you get a lot of the academic sides of that. One thing that's not on here is the 6 years I worked with PMI, and 3 of those as president of the local PMI chapter. So here's the 3 examples that we're going to use in the class. We're going to talk about Hewlett-Packard, Raytheon, which used to be Hughes Aircraft, and the Allenbaugh House. And I think it's important to look at these, look at the issues, know the risk and how you plan that. The communication plan is from the stakeholders, and understand your bias profile. And we'll talk about biases in a second here. So when the HP, one of the key jobs that I worked with was on the merger of HP, Compaq, and the related companies. and we were in the program office. And one of the key things that we had to understand, especially in a new organization, a new company, is who are your stakeholders? Who are the people you're reporting to? I don't think we did a good job of that at first. I think we were trying to all go back into our old ways or old structures. And when we started identifying the stakeholders in the new organization, I think it really helped us along the way. But that was a hard process for us, a lot because we didn't take the time to study the stakeholders, and we didn't, until we had to, as part of the PMO, actually identify an active communication plan. So that was one of the lessons I learned along the way. Other one is Raytheon. When I left the Navy, I worked for the then Hughes Aircraft, or now Raytheon, and I was lucky enough to be in a lot of key project areas. One is when we started doing what's called automated planning. And the little story that goes here is that during a chance we had to work on the project in the called printed circuit area, two or three of us on this team made a great deal of improvements in the printed circuit area. And a lot of innovative ideas. We were able to save a lot of money. We were able to automate activities, and the quality went up. After that, I was asked to go to a new area, and that new area was a totally different area. And I made a big mistake. I went in because I thought that I was told by the management, "Oh, we need you. We want you. Boy, the team needs to have this new experience." I was wrong. I remember going to my first team meeting and getting up, and I was introduced, and I started out going, "Well, I'm here to help. I am here to make your job easier." And then I made the fatal mistake of saying, "I will help you solve the problem you have with the extra long hours you work on the weekends." And then I kind of noticed the body language of the group kind of closed down. What I figured out later on, or we found out, was that the overtime that I was talking about, which the one stakeholder group, management, wanted to reduce, was also a prime source of income for the team. So I suddenly became not a friend or something that's going to help their career. I became a threat. I did not understand those stakeholders, and that was a major problem. And by the way, the project took a long, long time to complete, and it was really held up by some very simple analysis of what the stakeholders were. And words you say once to a team, they never seem to go away. The last one is when a few years ago, I was asked to help a project to finish it's called the Allenbaugh House here in Boise, Idaho. It's a community project. It is dealing with a detox and mental health activity. There are 5 government partners. There's 2 large hospitals, United Way. And if we didn't complete that activity, we had to return the grant funding, which was already started, which was significant because we had started a building. What I learned from this is that you have to understand who your stakeholders are. And government and hospitals and volunteer organizations, they are unique in that the PR or relationships or communications are critical. And that was a big area we had as one of the first project steps we did, is we defined the stakeholders, developed a communication plan, which actually helped us in the short term as we had issues come up. We could then communicate to our stakeholders and not cause a great deal of anxiety. One of the stakeholders reminded me that she wanted to hear from me, not read about it in the Idaho Statesman, the daily paper. So I hope those little examples that, from the presentation we gave HP help. I also look at this from a point of classes that can help you as a project manager. There's communications, and you'll take classes in the program on communications. As you go into marketing, they'll talk about how you market your product, those 4 Ps. That's your project at times also. PR management, how do you get the awareness? And one we don't talk a lot about, but there's political issues everywhere. So political science majors, welcome to the world of business. Team management, we talk about that in our classes, and you'll get other classes. And then we also have classes in the program on organizational behavior. These are the soft skills that make or break a program. Too often people think it's just the cost estimates, the WBS, that kind of activity. I find that soft skills are as big a challenge for project managers and teams as the hard skills of estimating and control. This is one of my favorite slides because it comes from a book by Robbins, and it's down the bottom called Decide and Conquer. And it's about how you have to understand what your biases are. And there's a whole bunch on there. The nice thing about this book is that they basically It's about chapters of 4 to 5 pages, and they really clearly define each one of these. How many of us worry about procrastination or have a problem with it? I do sometimes. Enculturation, what's our background? Do we understand things like sunk cost? Are we available for activity? Are we self-serving? Are we framing the issue? Are we sometimes overconfident? Boy, those are things that can come in place. So as you look at biases for yourself, let's look at biases of your stakeholders, trying to understand who they are. So now let's switch over and look at the stakeholder analysis tool. I've opened up the tab in the workbook called Stakeholder, and we're using this as an example. So we're talking again about the creation of the career track program. So when I start looking at the stakeholders, some of the things I look at is the dean. The dean of the College of Business and Economics is a very important player in this activity. And his role, as we go across the chart, is the total program. And if you look up again in Excel and you find our little comment areas up here, we find the comment areas of high, medium, down to low impact. And we find the same over in influence. And so all those, if you look at the dean, he's got high impact and high influence. We will talk later about risk and what risk really means, but how much risk is a person willing to take? Are they a risk taker? They seek new activities and go from there and make things happen? Are they kind of, well, we'll see on both sides and weigh the issues? Or basically you'll find in a lot of industries or a lot of people, especially if they have a bias that they've had a failure in the past or an issue, they are low risk takers. We're not going to do this. And so I think the dean is probably a medium risk taker. He looked at this, knew he had control and could make it happen. But what he needs is his MBA program, line 1 up here, to be a key part of the VSU program. He's responsibility for the business program. Dr. Smith, who helped drive this whole program, his role is graduate programs. Again, his impact and influence are high in their 5s. He helped drive this program. I see him as a high risk taker. How do you get this information? A lot of this is just your talking to people, understanding the people. It probably is not good to walk up and ask them are you a high, low, or medium risk taker, but from your view and your activity, you can do that and understand that. He wanted to develop a world-class program, and his responsibility was MBA and other graduate programs. And down the 3rd line, we find Trish, and she's in charge of this program. She has influence and impact, not quite as much as the dean and Dr. Smith. Her needs are class, all these wonderful things we get into class students, all this kind of activity, including internships. She's program management, so she's a key stakeholder. The instructors, how are we going to do course management? We're going to look at our influence and the impact a little bit less. Mild risks, sometimes you want to be real aggressive and sometimes you're not that much of a risk taker. What do you do in these 2-unit new classes? I think we all play with that. I think it varies by instructor. And we need information as needed, and our responsibility is to make sure you have quality instruction. I added more columns down here. When you open your worksheet, you can go through and you can look at these. As I look at the students, how do you think you have, what impact do you think you have? What influence do you have? And reading through all your individual charters you did at first, you all have different risk tolerances. And we go down the other rest of the chart and look at other business programs, family of students, things like that. So this is a tool for you to capture who those stakeholders are. My suggestion is to use it early, use it often, look at it, and I'll help you develop a lot of your activity around risk, and it will definitely drive the communication plan. So how do we look at communications? So how do we communicate? The whole thing about the sender, receiver, the message, and all that are classical theories, but they're important to look at, but also in project management is how you define that. How do you structure? How do you make sure you have the right communication path and emphasis in your project? If we look at types of communication, PMI, and a lot of textbooks break it down to the basically the formal type and the informal. So we have the blue on top of formal written, formal verbal. We have informal written, and we have informal verbal. It's important for you to manage how you want your message to be seen by your stakeholders. If you are dealing with the dean, you probably would like to make sure it's either formal verbal or formal written. You really don't want that informal verbal of someone going down the hall and giving a status report on the project that may or may not reflect what's really going on. So as we look at this, think of how types of communication you're using and think of whether it needs to be more formal, whether it needs to be verbal and or written. And this is an important point for you to look at to understand how you communicate with your stakeholders. One of the key things that keeps popping up in all literature and all the current marketing activity is meetings. Let's look at this problem and have a meeting. One thing we've tried to do in our MBA program is have an agenda for each class. That helps drive the meeting. So what we were asking you to do is what makes a good meeting. You want to have a good meeting if people understand why what you're trying to communicate, know what your stakeholders need, and you want to have a good plan on your part. What hurts is meetings is seen as a waste of time. Too many meetings. Also, what do you think about meetings and communication? How do you see this in your personal communications? Have you seen valuable meetings? Have you seen meetings that aren't that good? Start becoming a strong meeting manager. It will help you in the MBA program, help you in internship, and in your career. Continuing on with our topic about meeting, some of the reasons to have the meeting. Do you need the team input? Is the team forming? Remember our storming, forming, and norming type activity? What you want to see their reaction. Sometimes body language is an important thing. Reasons not to have a meeting. Nothing to review. It was scheduled, so therefore we're having our meeting. It's, Tuesday at 10, we always have a meeting. Well, if you don't have a need for the meeting, you'd be surprised how popular you can become in a company if you give that time back to people. So think about how you have meetings and how you structure those. In this slide on communication mapping, we always try to look at what's the purpose. Are you here to inform? Are you here to seek input? Which format do you want? Written, you want a meeting, or do you want online? All those are available to you, and use those in your communication planning and mapping. What works best is an important part of how your stakeholders view you and how you meet their needs. So as we look at meetings one more time, let's look at basically tips for a meeting. Have a purpose, develop an agenda, set the time to local and remote if you have remote teams, communicate with your agenda ahead of time, manage the meeting, and follow up. And hint, people would rather do something than your meeting. So let's take a look at a communication plan and see how it helps drive these kind of issues forward. Well, here we are in our communication plan in our workbook, and I'm leaving the part in red, which is in the workbook, to help you, kind of a framework for you as a template. And basically they're saying what type of information, what is the description, who sends and who gets. So let's look down, and my friend Ms. Lamb gets a whole bunch of this activity. So one of the key things is program performance. It's semester reports on the program. Basically, it's a semester plus 30 days or equals 30 days. It's a meeting. Trish sends it, and she has the dean, director, and the staff. So that's an important part of the program to see where we are. Another part of the program is the course schedules, times and locations of class. These are usually published at least 3 months before, and they are published. And who needs those? The staff, students, the people in the building, IT, all those need those kind of activities. I think another important thing is internships. So program performance and students in the program. It's a huge opportunity to help market you and the program. So marketing materials to showcase the program and who are our students. That's on a published schedule. It's data that's published. And again, the office run by Trish where it does that is a big deal for us. And it's an important part of the Kobe BSU program. So the companies out there are key stakeholders. We didn't have those on our original chart. Maybe we did. But we need to have those out there, because what are their needs from the program? What do they want? And they want those quality MBA students, which you can do. So how would you fill this out for your program? What would you add in? Again, we're looking at what communications. Again, here was performance, schedule, marketing data. What's the description? What's the frequency of it? Could be weekly, could be monthly. It could be whatever you need to do. What's the format for it? Could be online. Who is the owner and who is the recipient? All key tools in your communication plan, all driven by the stakeholder analysis. As we return to communication, one of the things we talk about and we try to emulate in the class is your agenda for meetings. Again, that will be a very popular area for you. It's a tool to communicate your plan, what people need to do at the meeting, set a time frame. Also, it's like a menu in a restaurant. What is for dinner? I have a challenge for you. For the next month, do not go to a meeting unless there's an agenda. If you have a meeting that you do for an activity or your internship or your job, make sure you publish that ahead of time. See how more efficient you can become when you have planned communication. One of the other key concepts is review your meeting. We call this the plan, do, check, act. PDCA. Again, when you have your communication, your meeting, always ask those questions. Try to get the feedback. Did this meet your needs? Are you getting the information you need? People do not always tell you. You have to find that. So make sure when you ask that for that feedback, and when you get it, make the improvements needed to make your meeting a success, and all of your communications around your project and program. An interesting exercise is how much time of your time is in communications. As we said earlier, project managers probably spend 90% of their time in some form of communication. Another question that always comes up is how many communication channels are there? Communication channels are sender receivers. So here's a little exercise for us to think about. If n is the number in the class, and we used the formula before of n times n minus 1 over 2, how many communication channels are in this class? What if I was to add 10 more students? How many new communication channels would I have? It's a funny little formula, but it gives you a real visibility of the complexity of communication. So sometimes the more you have on a team, the more communication you have. So try this little example and we'll try it in class. Any questions on communications or stakeholders? We'll cover this again in class. We'll be using these two templates plus the risk template for your next team assignment. And again, these are key areas. They're the soft skills of project management that make, in most cases, in some cases, can break a program. Learn them well. They will serve you in all areas of management. Again, if you have any questions, please contact us.